Hello friends, I welcome you all to CLAT lecture series sponsored by Shishan, the Rank Zone. I am your mentor Shekhar Gehlot. So in today's class, we'll discuss legal maxims, phrases and legal terms. Okay, these legal maxims, legal phrases and legal terms, I'll give you a basic overview of what these legal maxims, terms, or phrases are. Usually, we all know that our law, the first time law originated, okay, law originated. When I say law, I mean to say codified law. Originated in Latin countries and Greece. Okay. It is also very famously said that first codified law was Code Napoleon. Okay, Napoleon Bonaparte has been a famous dictator. So at the time he used to rule almost all of the world. So when he used to rule the world, he set up his own legal system, and legal system originated usually from there. Though we all had courts, different legal systems, like even in India we have Manusmriti, okay, which dates far back than any other codified law. Forget about Code Napoleon, any other law. Indian law is the most ancient law, but the only thing is that our law was not codified in the way the law got codified in in this mid era, in the era of Napoleon. Okay, so most of these sayings or phrases are in Latin or Greek. Okay, they are in Greek language or they are in Latin language. Okay, so and because so many judgments or so many sayings originated in Greece which have relevance for the law or philosophy. That is why it is very relevant for a law student to know these terms and have a fair understanding of what these legal terms, phrases, and maxims mean. And they also form a great part of CLAT series. When you go for the CLAT examination, almost 8 to 10 marks are dedicated to legal terms and legal maxims. So they are so many numbers, almost like 500 to 1000, but we will deal with those who have high probability of being asked in the examination, or those which are really very famous and are most frequently asked and are most frequently cited in the judgments as well. Okay, only those we will do, the most important and relevant ones. You give a quick look and then we will read. So, a brief introduction is: a legal maxim or a legal phrase elucidates or expounds a legal principle. Elucidates or expounds a legal principle means itself, usually it is a two or three words phrase containing two or three words, but it has a wide meaning. So, you are trying to abbreviate a big sentence, you are trying to abbreviate a big legal principle into three or four words. Okay, how do you do that? You do it through a legal maxim, legal principle, proposition, or concept. There are many legal maxims which are commonly used. This chapter selectively seeks to explain some maxims, phrases which are relevant to tax context. Uh, it should be CLAT, test context. An attempt is made to not only state the legal principle signified by a maxim or phrase, but its application in case laws is also stated to enable readers to apply it in appropriate situations in CLAT. Okay, so we'll go by serial wise. Okay, we'll go alphabetically. First we'll do all the legal phrases and maxims which begin with word A. Okay, the first one in the series is ab initio. Okay, ab initio. It means the meaning of this word is from the beginning or inception or from the first act. From the first act. Like sometimes you may hear a phrase. Okay, sometimes these phrases like this. Void ab initio. It means ab initio means from the beginning. That means the contract is void since beginning. Okay, the contract is void since beginning. Like we discussed when we were reading company law, we discussed the acts which are ultra vires to the memorandum of association. Those acts are void ab initio, void right from the beginning, right from the inception. They were brought into the picture. They were illegal ab initio. Okay, so act which is ultra vires to memorandum of association, which goes beyond the scope of the memorandum of association, goes beyond the powers of the memorandum of association and the company are void ab initio. This is ab initio from the beginning or inception, or minor ab initio, like idols or gods or deities. Okay, like there was a famous case of Ram Janmabhoomi case. In this case, the case was being contested on behalf of Lord Sri Ram. Okay, and whenever we contest a case in behalf of God or goddesses in the country or for the temples, then these idols, these deities, gods, they are considered minor ab initio, that they are minor and they cannot represent themselves. They need some major person, they need someone else to represent them. Okay, that is why we have trust which maintains these temples, because the gods are minor ab initio, they are considered to be minor since from beginning. Actio personalis moritur cum persona. Okay, actio signifies an action. Personalis means personality, personal. Okay, personal right. Personalis is personal right. Lis is litigation. Lis is litigation. Personal right to litigation. Moritor means death. Moritor is death. Cum persona. Okay, it a personal right of action dies with the person. A personal right of action dies with the person. Now let us say A has taken 5 lakh rupees from B. Okay. Now B has a personal right. B has a personal right to file a case against A. Okay. But if B dies, this right to file case will also die with the B. Die with B. Okay, though usually it's a civil case which we are discussing right now. In civil scenario, your legal representatives or your legal assignees, they also can file a case once you have died. Okay, but consider it we are considering a hypothetical situation in which B does not have any legal heirs left. B is alone. Okay, or suppose B has a personal right. Suppose A has caused some hurt to A has damaged B's scooty. Okay, and B has suffered some injuries. So only B can file a complaint, notice legal heirs. So once B dies, no one can file that claim against A. Okay, so personal right of action dies with the person. Or let us say, okay, this is a perfect example. A had a right to A had a right to promotion. Okay, A suppose was a government servant. So say he was a police inspector. He had a right to become ACP, but government somehow did not promote him to ACP level. But now A has died. Okay, when A has died, no one can file a case on behalf of A claiming that he should have been made a ACP. Okay, because A had a personal right. So actio personalis moritur cum persona means a personal right of action dies with the person. These maxims are really very relevant nowadays, because even though they are dated, they date back to 4 to 500 or even sometimes 1000 years old, but still we do follow them. Whatever we are trying to read here, they are still very much applicable. These legal principles are followed till date. Even today we follow these principles. Even today, if someone has a personal right and he dies, the personal right will die with that person. The right will not survive any longer. Actus curi naminum gravibit. Okay, actus curi naminum gravibit. An act of court shall prejudice no man. Okay, an act of court shall prejudice no man. This maxim has two meanings. Okay, first one is no one shall suffer due to act of court.
It's 6 o'clock.
Okay. Now, first is A. Suppose A files a bid for coal allocation with the government. Okay, and wins the tender. He has filed a tender for coal allocation and he wins that tender. Now, B is a person who says that this coal allocation is wrong and he files a case and he gets a stay. Okay, and now C, he gets a stay. A, who won a tender, he had paid suppose say 5 crore rupees, and then there was a stay. So his 5 crore is stuck with the government and he cannot even take the call. Now, meanwhile, there's an innovation and new source of energy has come up, and then now coal is outdated. Okay, so case dragged on for 2 to 3 years, and now A finally won the case. Now A has lost his money and his call value is also gone. So now act of court shall harm no one, because there was a stay because of the court. So now court will place him in the original position. Court will ask the government to pay back the money, plus court will ask B to compensate A as well for frivolous litigation and for defeating the valid rights of A. Okay, this is no one shall suffer due to act of court, because there was an act of court and there was a stay, so he suffered, so court is responsible for making it even. So now court will ask the government to pay back the money because coal is of no use to him anymore, and for 3 years because of B there was a stay. Now B must compensate. A commits a crime and is sent to jail. It cannot be said that court caused harm to A. Okay, this is the other meaning of the maxim, which says an act of court shall prejudice no man. Okay, this court will not prejudice a man. We cannot say that A is being prejudiced by the court, or A's liberty is being taken away by the court. No, what court is doing is court is doing justice. Court is not prejudicing someone. Court is not committing a harm to someone. Okay, so court ultimately does justice and balance in the society. So the maxim says an act of court shall prejudice no man. You have a look here and then we will discuss. Actus non facit reum nisi mens sit rea. Okay, it says the intent and act most must both concur to constitute the crime. It's a very celebrated principle of the criminal law. Okay, it says crime and mental intention. It says the crime and mental intention to commit that crime both must be present. Act alone is not punishable. It's a very celebrated principle of the criminal law adjudication. It says, suppose now let's take a situation. Nowadays IPL is going on, so take a very contemporary situation. A bowls a bouncer. A ball's a bouncer. You all understand. Bouncer is a ball which is having a very good height. It takes a bump on the ground and then goes up to the great height. It can go above shoulder level or even above your head. So it goes and hits the batsman on the head, and the batsman dies on the stop. Has A committed a crime? See, a man has died. Killing a man is a crime. So a man has died, but he has still not committed a crime. Why? Because his mental intention, when he throws that bouncer at the bowler, at the batsman, his mental intention is not to kill that batsman. He is only trying to confuse the batsman, only trying to threaten the batsman or stop the batsman from hitting a run. So that is his only intention. His intention is not to commit a murder, not to kill the batsman, but somehow the ball struck him on the head and the helmet cracked open and he died. This is very unfortunate. A man has died, but still A cannot be prosecuted for killing a man because the law says, because this principle says, act and mental intention to commit that act. Okay, killing and mental intention, mental knowledge to kill the person, both must concur together. If there is no mental intention, purely only an act will not constitute an offense. So A has not committed an offense here. Ad hoc for this or for this special purpose. Ad hoc means for some special purpose. Ad hoc appointment, you must have heard. Ad hoc means for some purpose, for some special purpose, like you must have heard ad hoc appointment, ad hoc committee, or ad hoc arrangement. It means that when something permanent cannot be placed into system, okay, so till the time that permanent establishment is not there, you you continue with some temporary arrangement. Okay, you continue with some temporary arrangement. That temporary arrangement is called ad hoc. Okay, ad hoc appointment, you have to appoint a permanent teacher or permanent lecturer, but you are not able to find a suitable permanent lecturer. So till the time you don't find a suitable permanent lecturer in the institution, you continue with an ad hoc lecture. Okay, temporary lecture for this purpose only. Okay, or you set up a ad hoc committee to find about the solution to the pollution. Okay, ad hoc committee or some ad hoc arrangements, these are called, that is the meaning of word ad hoc. Ad valorem, to the value or based on the value. Ad valorem means, you find the price. By ad valorem, you are trying to find a price. You are trying to find a price of something. How do you find the price of something? You find the value of it. Okay, what is the value of that service and what is the cost of that service? Then you come to a price. Then you finalize a price. Ad valorem is a method of fixing a price upon the valuation, upon the value of thing. Okay. We have court fees. Okay, whenever you go, whenever one wants to file a civil litigation in the court, he is supposed to pay a court fees. And how do you pay a court fees? How much court fees should you pay? Who will decide that? That will be decided on ad valorem basis. Okay, whatever is the value of your suit, suppose you are seeking 5 lakh from someone, so value of your suit, value of your case is 5 lakh. So you should pay ad valorem fees which is applicable on value of 5 lakh rupees. Okay, or legal fees or market value of something. You have to find out a market value of the company. How do you find the market value of the company? market price of the company. You by ad valorem method, you find the value of the company. What is the value of the company, and as per that value, what should be the price? Okay, if you are getting that value in market at some rate, then you will definitely fix the same price or similar price to other services which you are providing similar value to you. Elegans contraria non est audiendus. Okay, elegans contrary allegations, contrary allegations. Non est audiendus. Audiendus means hearing. Non est means does not deserve. He is not to be heard who alleges things contradictory to each other. This is again a celebrated principle of the law for adjudication. Okay. Okay. He who is making conflicting statements, law will not believe him. Court will not believe that person. A files a case and states that B beat him. Now case is filed against B. Later on he says, no, no, it was C who beat him. Later he takes his statement back again. He says, no, it was A only. It was B only who had beaten him. Okay, now he has come back to B. Later on he says, no, actually D beat him down. So now court cannot rely or court cannot believe such a person, and his case has to be rejected because he does not deserve to be heard. Court cannot listen to such a person who is alleging contradictory things. Okay, he is making contradictory claims. You must have heard about a story of a shepherd boy story in your early student days. Shepherd boy story, he used to yell wolf wolf or lion lion, and the villagers used to rush out to support him, and then they would find out that ultimately there was no wolf. He was just trying to play a prank upon them. And one day when ultimately really a wolf came up and he cried wolf wolf, no one came out to help him, assuming that he is again playing a prank, and ultimately the boy was killed. So this is the principle which is based in this legal maxim. It says when you are claiming contradictory things, when you are saying something and meaning something and then meaning something and then saying something, you do not deserve to be heard. Court cannot believe such a witness or such a person who is making contradictory stories. Odi alterum partum. No man shall be condemned unheard. Okay, no man shall be condemned unheard. When we read Bible has a column in which it says that when God made Adam and Eve. Okay, when God made Adam and Eve, according to Bible are the, according to Christianity are the first people, first living person on earth, Adam and Eve. Okay, he made Adam and Eve and he made a apple tree, and God told them not to eat the apple. Then it is said that Satan, okay, who was evil, he came in the he took up the guise of a snake. He became a snake and he went and told to the Adam to eat the apple. And Adam ate the apple. And then he went to the God. Then Satan went to the God to complain against Adam that, see, you asked Adam not to eat apple, but he has eaten it. Okay, now God, you must punish your subject, you must punish Adam. Then the God tells Satan that, let me listen to Adam as well. Let me listen to Adam as well. This is supposed to be the beginning of this legal maxim which says no one shall be condemned unheard. That means you cannot punish someone, or court cannot punish someone without giving him an opportunity to be heard, without giving him a chance to explain what his position is. Okay, now in the, let's go back to the cricketer example. A sent a bouncer to B. B is a batsman and he died. Now you are going to hang him. Now you are going to punish or hang the A, the bowler. Now law says, let us hear what A has to say. Let us hear whether A has an explanation. And then when A will give the explanation that he did not kill him, actually it was an accident in the sport, then in this case the A shall be set free because he has not committed a murder. So if you do not allow him chance to present his case, then you are going to do injustice to the man. Okay, no one shall be condemned unheard. That means you cannot put anyone behind the bars, you cannot demote anyone, you cannot take back somebody's right, you cannot take someone's property, you cannot take someone's money. Okay, without hearing him. So everyone has a right to be heard. So tomorrow if government takes an action against me, government wants to demolish my house, I can go to the court and say that you please hear me. Government is not listening me. You please hear me. Before my house is damaged, demolished, I must be heard. And then the court will allow me to speak. This is the right to be heard because no one can be condemned without hearing. It is famously known as right to be heard. Everyone has right to be heard. Abundant cautelous non nocet. Abundant or extreme caution does no harm. Abundant or extreme caution does no harm. Now, abundant or extreme caution does no harm. Now, government wants to set up a dam. Okay. Now, every one of us know that when you set up a dam, you have to divert the flow of a river, and because dam is a very sensitive area, if it overflows, a lot of villages could be submerged. So, government has to create a buffer zone, and in order to create a buffer zone, nearby villages are relocated. Government takes over the nearby villages and provides alternate lands to those villages. Government clears those villages. Okay, the land is reserved for, in case of some calamity, the water will go to that land and no harm shall be caused to the people. Now suppose 40 villages are supposed to be relocated for a safe dam, but government, as an extreme caution, okay, as an extreme caution, as an extreme abundance measure, government relocates 50 villages. Now these people of 10 more villages, because earlier it was 40 but now 10 more villages have been added. So these 10 people, 10 villages people file a case against the government that government has illegally relocated them or illegally replaced them. Then in this case, government is not at fault because this maxim will save the government. Okay, because it says abundant or extreme caution does no harm, because government is trying to take extreme caution. When you are taking extreme caution, it is not illegal, it is all valid. Or you can equate it with the lockdown situation. So many people said that lockdown is bad and they went to Supreme Court or various high courts that lockdown should be lifted, curfew should be lifted, why the government has prohibited our liberty, why we are not allowed to get out of our own homes in the corona lockdown. What the Supreme Court or High Court said, they said abundant or extreme caution does no harm. Government is trying to take extreme caution so as to prevent the spread of pandemic. Okay, and this is all valid. Abundant cautelous non nocet. Okay, this curfew or lockdown is not meant to harm anyone, it is only for benefit. Actori incumbit onus probendi. The burden of proof lies on the plaintiff. Actori incumbit onus probendi. Plaintiff is the person who files a case. Okay. In legal language, plaintiff is a person who has filed a case against someone. Suppose I have to take money from you. Okay, and you are not repaying me that money. So what I will do, I will file a case of recovery against you in the court. Because I have instituted that case, I will be called plaintiff and you will be called defendant. Okay, so the rule says burden of proof lies on the plaintiff or one who makes an allegation. Okay, it's a very, again, a very celebrated criminal principle as well as civil principle which is applied even today, and very much, almost in all cases, this principle is applicable. It says that one who makes an allegation or the one who has filed a case must prove his case. So when I say that you have to pay me money, I must prove that I gave you money and you have to give it back to me. Just merely by making allegations, merely by saying that you have taken my money, it won't automatically be presumed that you have to give me money back. I will have to prove that thing as well. If I am saying that Ram has committed a theft in my house, then I must prove it. Then Ram has committed a theft. Merely on my statement, if Ram is going to be arrested, and if we are going to ask Ram that you prove that you have not committed theft, then it shall be injustice to Ram. Okay, because I am saying that Ram has committed theft, then now Ram cannot be saddled with the burden of proving that he did not commit theft. It is upon me to prove that it was actually Ram who committed theft. First of all, I'll have to prove that a theft was committed. And then, if the theft was committed, who committed the theft? Ram committed that theft. It is upon me to prove it. Okay, we cannot simply make an allegation against someone and then leave it to that person to defend himself. No, it is the one who makes an allegation or the one who files a case, who is the plaintiff, who is alleging something. He shall himself have to prove his case. Okay, it is not upon the other party to prove, it is on the plaintiff to prove his case. It can never be the responsibility of the other person to disprove allegations against him, to disprove that he has not committed theft. It is always upon the one who has made the allegation that you have to prove them. Okay, other person does not have to do anything. If you are not able to prove your case will fail. Okay, other person may not do at all anything, he may just sit out through the trial, he may not even utter a single word, and if you are not able to prove your case, your case will fail. Why? Because of this maxim which says actori incumbit onus probendi. The one who makes an allegation shall prove his case. Give it a quick look and then we will discuss. Actus reus, a guilty act or a guilty deed. Okay, actus reus means a guilty act. Committing theft, murder, arson, loot, kidnapping, etc. These acts are called actus reus. Okay, actus reus means guilty act. If you have committed something, if you are someone is trying to say that you have committed a crime, then court will see whether the act is actus reus or not. Okay, whether the act is actus reus or not, whether the act is guilty deed or not. Okay, whether the act is guilty deed or not. A policeman who is chasing a wanted criminal. He enters into an encounter with the criminal and criminal is shooting at the police person. Now police in retaliation shoots at the criminal and criminal dies. Whether this act will be actus reus or not, court will have to see. Now people will say police murdered a man, police has killed a man. Court will have to see whether this is actus reus, whether this act is guilty act or not. Now court will come to a conclusion that because he was a history sheeter and it was an encounter, a legible encounter, and he died in the encounter, so the act is not an actus reus but is a bona fide act of self-defense. Okay. So first of all, if someone is trying to allege that he has committed, other person has committed some crime, he'll have to prove that whatever he has done qualifies as a crime. Whatever he has done is actually an actus reus. If the act is not actus reus, no crime is committed. Contemporanea expositio est optima et fortissimo in legi. Okay, contemporanea expositio est optima et fortissimo in legi. This means, let us read the explanation. Contemporaneous exposition or interpretation is regarded in law as the best and strongest, most prevailing. The best and the surest mode of construing an instrument is to read it in the sense which would have been applied when it was drawn up. Okay, it also says true test of the law lies in the spirit, not in letter. What I'm trying to say right now will be going above your head, but I'll just explain to you people. Okay, it says that contemporary means existing time. Okay, the interpretation when something is not understood properly, when some legal instrument is there, suppose someone has made a will, okay, and he has used some words in that will. Okay, he has used some words in that will. Now we'll have to understand the meaning of that word which existed in 1950, not in 2020. If we want to understand the real context of something, then we'll have to go back to that time. Okay, we'll have to go back to that time when it was said. Like, I'll give you an example. In Punjabi, this word BB means sister. Okay, but in Hindi language, BB means wife. Okay, so suppose a letter is written by a Punjabi person. A Punjabi person has written a letter in Hindi, but he has written the letter in some like 1960 or 70. He has made a will and he has left some estates, left some property for the BB. Okay, now we'll have to understand what he meant by this word BB, whether he meant wife or whether he meant sister. We'll have to put ourselves back in 1970. That in 1970, whether this word BB was actually being used for sister or for wife, okay, or whether it had some other meaning. Today it may have some of different meaning, when the person made that letter, when he wrote that letter, at that time what was the intention? Okay, because the person who is making a law, suppose someone is making a law legislation in 1950 or someone is writing a letter in 1960, he is definitely not aware of what will happen in 2000, 2010 or 20. So he'll write the letter as per 1960 or the law will be drafted as per 1950. So if we want to understand the true meaning of the letter or the true meaning of the act, we'll have to place ourselves in that situation. We'll have to assume that as if we are standing in 1950 or 1960. Okay, when we understand archaeologist, okay, archaeologist, often we find out structures. Okay, after excavation we find out a lot of temples, a lot of markets which were used by Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, or ancient people, or coins belonging to ancient civilizations, or some language, some scripts written on the temples. Then how we try to understand those things? Okay, we try to understand those things by placing ourselves in their position, that if we were 2000 years ago, then how, what type of market would have been there? Then only we understand it. We cannot equate an ancient structure with 2020. Okay, this is the meaning of this law. It means, it says, when sometimes in the court there are a lot of laws, okay, and legal languages are, meanings of word keep changing. Okay, so if there is a discussion over a word used in the law, so if there is a confusion, then we'll have to place ourselves in that time, that when this word was written, when this word or when this phrase was used, how this phrase used to be used in that point of time. Colibet in sua arte perito est credendum. Okay, credence should be given to one skilled in his peculiar profession, or credit is to be given to anyone skilled in his own art or profession. Okay, I'll again read it. Colibet in sua arte perito est credendum. Credence should be given to one skilled in his peculiar profession. Credit is to be given to anyone skilled in his own art and profession. Now let us see is that whenever someone is skilled or professional in something, we have to give weightage to that person. Let us see, now there is a Now there is a suicide note. Okay, suppose a lady has committed suicide and she has mentioned B and C. Her husband and her mother-in-law says for guilty of causing her suicide. Okay, for torturing her so much that she committed suicide. Now there is a prosecution against B and C. A case is against B and C. Now B and C says that this suicide note is not genuine. This handwriting is not of the one who has died. This handwriting is of someone else. Okay, this is not this person's handwriting. Now what court will do? Will the court will send it to the handwriting expert. Handwriting expert will say that the handwriting on the suicide note belongs to the person who has committed suicide. He will identify this handwriting by some other notes or some other copies or some other handwriting specimens which are available of the person who has died. Now he says that one who has died is actually the one who wrote down this suicide note. Okay, while the husband and the mother-in-law, they are saying this is not his, this is not her handwriting. Okay, they say that we know her better, we have spent 7 years with her, we know her handwriting, this is not her handwriting, this suicide note is fabricated. But the handwriting expert says this handwriting belongs to the wife only, the one who has died. Now in this situation, whose favor will the court take? whose whose statement will the court believe? Now this maxim will come to the aid of the court. It says the one who is skilled in his profession should be given credit. Now because the handwriting expert is skilled, okay, he is a professional, he is skilled in his peculiar profession, his profession is to identify the handwritings, he is the one who is skilled, so his opinion will prevail. If he says that the handwriting matches to the one who has died, then that means the suicide note is genuine. If he says the handwriting does not match, that means suicide note is fabricated. Okay, this is how it works. Cursus curae, s lex curae. Okay, cursus curae, s lex curae. The practice of this court is the law of the court. The course of the court, that is the course of the procedure or practice, is the law of the court. Okay, the practice of this court is, it says precedent coming from judges must follow the outgoing judges. Okay, the practice of this court is the law of the court. What is practice? Practice is usually, practice is what, when we talk about practice, okay, what is the practice in your house? Someone says what is the practice in your house, I will tell that we have a what is the practice in our house? I will say that we have a joint family. Okay, our parents live with us, and then we do this, we wake up at this time, then we do puja, worship, and then we have breakfast, then we go to the work, and then we return, that time we sleep, and this and that. This is the practice, and we celebrate. What is the Hindu practice? What is the Hindu practice? Hindu people follow these celebrations. Hindu have these festivals. What is the practice in Tamil Nadu? This is the practice in Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, Tamil people wear dhotis. They wear South Indian dishes. Okay, this is the practice. Practice means tradition. Okay, practice means tradition. What is the tradition? Practice is tradition. What are we doing for a long period of time? The practice of this court is the law of the court. It means the tradition of this court is the law of the court. That means whatever court has been doing from a long time, we will follow it. Okay, whatever the court has been doing from the long time, we will follow it. Suppose I become a judge in 2020. I have to decide a case. I have to decide a dispute. X is the type of dispute. This X type of dispute was also decided in 1984 by another judge. Then again, X was decided by another judge in 2005. Similarly, both of these judges decided this X type of dispute in similar manner. Okay, first time this X type of dispute appeared in 1984, a judge decided it. In 2004 5, another judge decided it as per the 1984 judge. Now in 2020, I have to decide a case. So it the maxim says that the practice of this court is the law of the court. That means the tradition of this court is the law of the court. What is the tradition? Tradition means how this type of case, this type of dispute has been decided earlier. Okay, earlier there was a dispute between two farmers over the river in 1984 over the boundary. The court decided in that way. In 2005 again, there was dispute again between some two other farmers regarding the boundary wall. Again the court decided it in that way. So today in 2020, I cannot decide it in some other fashion. I will follow the tradition of the court. Whatever the practice of the court, whatever the earlier courts have said, the later court, I will follow that only. Okay, whatever my previous judges said, I now as a new judge shall follow my previous judges. De facto, existing in actually, especially when contrary to or not established by law. De facto, facto means fact. Something which exists in fact but not in law. That is called de facto. Let us take the example of Sonia Gandhi Manmohan Singh. Okay, but before taking this example, I want to make it clear that I am not trying to strike a political controversy here, or I am not trying to make a statement. I am just trying to say, I am just trying to understand a media picture. Media used to say that Sonia Gandhi is controlling the government. Manmohan Singh is the prime minister, but media used to say that Sonia Gandhi is the actual prime minister, or the Rahul Gandhi, they are acting as a prime minister. So this is the kind of situation which we are trying to deal here. De facto. De facto means in fact. What is the fact? The reality is that someone else is the prime minister, but in reality, someone other is acting as a prime minister. Okay. Like say Patanjali Trust. Okay, Patanjali Trust. Patanjali Trust, you must have heard Baba Ramdev and Patanjali Trust. Now, Baba Ramdev is not having any part or ownership or shareholding in Patanjali Trust. Okay, trustees are someone else. But who is the actual director of that trust? Who is the actual chairman of that trust? Baba Ramdev. Okay, now we can say that legally someone else is the trustee or the chairman of the trust, Patanjali Trust. But de facto, in reality or in fact, Baba Ramdev is the chairman. Okay, that is de facto position is Baba Ramdev is holding the Patanjali group. But legally, someone else is doing. That is de facto. Okay, that means something which is in fact but not in law. Okay. Like ICC and BCCI. ICC is International Council of Cricket. BCCI is Board of Cricket Control of India. It is said that international head of the Cricket Association is ICC. That is legally. Legally, ICC controls the cricket tournament across the globe. But it is said that BCCI is in reality BCCI is so strong, it is even stronger than ICC, and BCCI controls ICC. The sport of cricket is controlled by BCCI. That is, de facto BCCI controls cricket around the globe, but legally ICC does that. Okay, this is what de facto is. De minimis non curate lax. The law does not concern itself with trifles. Okay, it says that small issues or trifle issues which are of not value, the court do not entertain them. Like I have written an example. Wife says that husband should also cook. Okay. Now there is a dispute between husband and wife. Now wife has taken the husband to the court and wife says that husband should also cook. Now the court will say, I am not concerned with this. Who cooks in your house? You cook, your husband cook, your mother-in-law cook, your son cook, or you order from Zomato, Swiggy. This is not my concern. This is a trifle matter. Okay, this is a small matter. Court will not enter into these issues that who will cook. Okay, so law does not concern itself with trifles. Or suppose I throw a piece of paper at someone. Okay, not a girl. Okay, if I throw a piece of paper at girl, that will amount to sexual harassment definitely. But suppose I throw a piece of paper at a boy. What is the paper? Paper weights. What is the weight of paper? Almost negligible. I roll it and throw at someone, and he goes to the court and complain that he threw a piece of paper on me. Now court will say, what do I do? You throw it back. What is this thing? He threw a piece of paper and you have come to the court. Okay, so law says we are not concerned with trifles, small things. Delegatus non potest delegare. A delegate himself cannot delegate. A delegated power cannot be further delegated. Delegation means giving power to someone. Okay. Delegation is giving power to someone. Like, let us say PM Modi. Everyone knows that Narendra Modi, Shri Narendra Modi, is the Prime Minister of India. So, whatever important decisions about the India, who takes them? Definitely the Parliament or the Prime Minister. Okay, Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes that decision. Now, who gives that power to Prime Minister Narendra Modi? Who has given that power? Definitely, we people have voted for him. Okay, some may have voted, some may not have voted, but ultimately, he is the Prime Minister. Okay, that means majority has voted for him. So, who gives him power? We read Constitution of India. The Constitution of India delegates. Constitution of India delegates the power to run the country to Prime Minister. Okay, the Constitution of India delegates the power to run the country to Prime Minister. Now, suppose Prime Minister is really very close to me. Okay, PM Modi is close friend of mine. Can he give this power to run the country to me? Okay, now can he give this power to run the country to me? No, because he himself does not have original power. Original power is with the people of India or with the Constitution of India. Okay, people of India have given this power to Narendra Modi. People of India says that Narendra Modi, you take decision for us. Now Narendra Modi, tomorrow can Narendra Modi say that he is my friend Shekhar Gehlot, Let him take the decision. He will sign in my place. Can this be done? No, this cannot be done. Okay, this maxim says power cannot be delegated further. Delegated power cannot be delegated. Okay, I am a judge. How do I become a judge? I clear a paper and I become a judge. I sign a letter of appointment. I become a judge. Who gives the power of judge to me? That appointment letter. Okay, that appointment letter states Shekhar Galot shall be a judge. Now, can I say let my son be the judge? No, I cannot say so. That appointment letter can say so. If the appointment letter is in the name of my son will be judge. But appointment letter is the original source of power, and that original source of power delegates the power to judge to me, and I cannot delegate it further. Okay, I cannot make my son a judge. That means a delegated power cannot be delegated at all. Okay, further. Clear? Adjustum generis of the same class or same kind. Adjustum generis of the same class or same kind, or the word etc, etc. Whenever in the law, whenever we read a law, suppose we read a tax law. Okay, tax law, we have GST. Okay, GST law says 18% GST on hockey, badminton, ball, squash, tennis, pads, gloves, etc. Okay, it says GST law says GST law says 18% tax on badminton, bat, ball, gloves, net, football, basketball, cricket kit, volleyball, etc. Okay, now that means on these things 18% GST would be there. Now suppose handball. Handball is not mentioned there. Okay, handball, or say let's say basketball is not mentioned there. Handball and basketball are not mentioned anywhere in the GST slab. And tomorrow I purchase a basketball. How will I be taxed? Tomorrow the sports person or the sports showroom taxes me at 18%, and I take the matter to the court. I say that basketball, it is not mentioned anywhere that basketball shall carry an 18% tax. Why this person has charged me an 18% tax? You file a case against him. Then this rule of adjustum generis will come into picture. This rule of adjustum generis means it says that birds of same feather flock together. Okay, it says that whenever the word etc is used in the law, it shall mean the whole class. Okay, it shall mean the whole class. So let us read the thing again. GST law says 18% tax on badminton, ball, bat, gloves, net, football, cricket kit, volleyball, etc. Now it says etc. That means if something is left, it is talking about the class. A class. What is the class? Sports goods, sports articles. So tomorrow, if boxing ring is left, punching bag is left, it is not written. It is not possible to write each and everything. So they usually write a class. Now they write a class that this class shall have 18% goods. What class? The class of sports goods. So badminton, handball, basketball, punching bag, they are not mentioned there. Okay, but still they become a part of this class because they are sports good. So automatically 18% GST will be available on them. This is the rule of adjustum generis. It says birds of same feather flock together. Of same class, they are of same class, same kind. Okay, so now tomorrow I purchase a butter and he taxes 18% on the butter. Then he cannot say it's written football, volleyball, then butter should also have 18%. No, butter has no relation with football, volleyball. He cannot say that if you'll eat butter, then you'll play better volleyball. This cannot be the done. He cannot say that if a sports person will eat butter nicely, he'll be healthy and he'll play well. This is the link between butter and the sports. So butter should also have 18%. No, okay, we are talking about goods here. We are talking about goods. We are not talking about nutrition products. We are talking about sports articles. So this is the rule of ejusdem generis. Easy. Birds of same feather flock together. Ex post facto. After the fact. Coming after happening of a fact. Okay. Ex post facto. Something which is happening after a fact will not be considered. Like we discussed constitutional law, no ex post facto law. Okay, we discussed that there is a principle which says no ex post facto law. Okay, it means that coming after happening of a fact will not be law says events coming or happening after happening of a fact shall not be considered. Okay, shall not be considered. Today
It's
there's
7 o'clock.
a lot of discussion about cryptocurrency or a Bitcoin. Okay, now suppose I hold a Bitcoin today. Today I hold a Bitcoin. After 30 days, I sell the Bitcoin and make a profit. 2 months, 60 days from today, government brings a law and says the Bitcoin is banned. You cannot sell the Bitcoin. If you sell the Bitcoin, you will be put behind the jail for 5 years. Now, can the government put me behind the jail for 5 years? Can the government say now we have brought the law and we come to know that 2 months ago you sold the Bitcoin, so now we'll put you behind the bars for 2 months? No. Why no? Because of this maxim which says no ex post facto. Okay, ex post facto. It says that happening after the event shall not be considered. Now, what is the happening, what is the event is sale of the Bitcoin. And what is happening after the event, what is happening after sale of the Bitcoin? A law came up after the event has happened. Okay, so now the law shall not be considered in my relation. Okay, as far as I am concerned, I have committed no offense because when I sold the Bitcoin, there was no law. Law came on, law is an ex post facto, so I shall not be judged by it. But after coming into the law, tomorrow again I sell the Bitcoin. Now I have committed the offense. Okay, now I have committed the offense. This is ex post facto, after the fact. Expressio unis est exclusio ulterius. Express mention of one thing excludes other. Okay. Or the special mention of one thing operates as the exclusion of things different from it. Express means when you clearly mention one thing. Clearly mention of something means exclusion of everything which is not mentioned. Okay, let us take an example. Only 18-year plus, not plus. Our law says only 18-year-old citizen can cast vote. Okay, very simple statement but a clear statement. Now, what is excluded? It excludes, sorry, only 18-year-old and above citizen can cast vote. Now, what does this do? It excludes okay. Now an American comes in India and says, I have voted in American election and liked it. Now I want to vote in your prime minister election as well. I want to vote for the BJP and he's an American. He says, I will vote. We say you cannot vote anywhere. Okay. He says where it is written that I cannot vote. We show him that our constitution says only 18-year-old and above citizen can cast vote. He will ask where it is mentioned that American cannot vote, where it is written in your law that American cannot vote. Now, this is not the law. The law says express your unis est exclusio alturius. That means express clear mention of one thing excludes everything else. So when it clearly mentions that only 18-year-old and above citizen can cast vote, when it says citizen, that means all non-citizens, you be American, Argentinian or Russian or Japanian, whatever you are excluded. We cannot separately show everyone. We cannot separately write that no American will vote, no Armenian will vote, no Argentinian, no Brazilian. Okay, we just have to mention 18-year and citizen can cast vote. Okay, so express mention of something will exclude all other things. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. Okay. False in one aspect is false in all respects. False in one thing, false in all. Okay, it says this is a law about a court proceeding and witnesses. Okay, court says falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. That if you are false, if you have come to the court and stated one false thing, you have stated something which is false, which is not true, and it later on comes to the knowledge of court that you have stated a false fact in the court. Court will not consider your complaint at all. Court will consider you a liar for all purposes. Okay, once a liar, forever a liar. It is like this. If you have spoken a lie, if you have spoken a false fact in the court, then whatever you are saying, all things will be considered as false. Okay, you shall be considered as a liar. Okay, it says that when you come to the court, you must speak only and only truth. If you are speaking false and you are caught speaking false, then whatever you are saying, other things shall also be considered as false. Once a false in one aspect is false in all respects. Generalia specialibus non derogant. General things do not derogate special things. General statements or provisions do not derogate from special statements or provisions. Okay. You just read this. General things do not derogate special things. Derogation means cutting down something, okay, or nullifying it or reducing the effect. It says general things do not nullify special things, okay. General things do not nullify special things. Let us understand it. We have a criminal procedure code, okay. Criminal procedure code means if you commit an offense, then you shall be tried in the court of law. And how you will be tried, it is stated in criminal procedure code. Any offense you commit, CRPC will be applicable upon you. But now there is a special law which says Narcotics Control Act is there, which says that, which establishes its own procedure, okay. It establishes its own procedure. And Narcotics Control Act, suppose it says, CRPC says accused can get bail. Narcotics Control Act says accused cannot get bail. Accused means a person who's found to be guilty, who's found to be having narcotics in his possession, who is under trial right now. So accused cannot get bail for first 2 months. CRPC says nothing. CRPC says he can get the bail. So now in this case, whether he will get the bail or not, the maxim says generalia specialibus non derogatis. It means general things do not nullify special things. So criminal procedure code is a general law applicable on all criminals in India. But Narcotics Control Act is applicable only on those criminals who are found guilty under having narcotic substance. So Narcotic Control Act is a special law. If the special law says no bail, then the general law, what is the general law? Criminal Procedure Code will not nullify or cannot nullify Narcotics Control Act. Then Narcotics Control Act will win. Okay, this means if some special thing is there, it will win over the general thing. Okay, if some law which is a special law, it will win over other laws. Habeas corpus. You have the body, a writ, court order that commands an individual or a government official who has restrained another to produce the prisoner at a designated time and place so that the court can determine the legality of custody and decide whether to order the prisoner's release. Now, this habeas corpus nowadays, when I'm making this video, a journalist, Arnab Goswami, has been arrested by Maharashtra police in one case, and he has filed an habeas corpus saying that he has been illegally arrested by the Maharashtra police. Okay, so he has filed a habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is when court can determine whether the person who has been arrested, maybe by the government or maybe by someone else, like some ashram or some hostel, some college, may keep the students, may not let the students come out. Okay, or some hospital, if a patient is not able to pay the fees, the hospital has, we have seen situations, hospitals have tied the patient to the bed. Hospitals are not letting the patient go. Okay, or a or an uncle or a father or a parent who feels that his daughter or the son would run away with someone and marry, they have locked him or her in a room. In such situations, this is called detention or arrest, that you have arrested that person. Police have arrested, or the government have arrested, military have arrested someone, or private people have arrested someone, or institutions, college, school, parents, etc have arrested someone. So an habeas corpus means bring the body. Court will then ask the person who has arrested that man, the police or the parent or someone, bring that person and will determine whether the person's arrest is legal or not. If it is illegal, court shall set him free. Now, for further discussion on habeas corpus, you guys please refer to the Constitution of India slides we have discussed in detail. Okay. Ignorantia fecit execusat, ignorantia juris non execusit. Ignorance of facts may be excused, but not ignorance of law. This maxim says ignorance of law is not defense at all. Now, suppose in our country, let's take the example of Bihar and Gujarat. Okay, Bihar and Gujarat are two states in which consumption or even having alcohol with you, consumption or even having a bottle of alcohol or beer is crime. Okay, or consuming alcohol is crime. But otherwise, in the country, it is not crime, it is all legal. In Delhi, we can consume alcohol. If you are about 25, you can consume alcohol, but you cannot consume alcohol if you are in Bihar or in Gujarat. Okay, so now I go to Bihar and I consume alcohol or liquor there, and I am found by the police. Now police takes me to the court and I tell that I was not aware that there is prohibition of consuming liquor in Bihar. So this ignorance, that I was ignorant of this law, this ignorance is not defense. If the crime has been committed and it is committed because you did not know the law, then this is not a defense. You shall be punished. Okay, you shall be punished. But yes, ignorance of fact may be excused, it may be an excuse, but it depends on case to case basis. Like state boundaries are not clear. Okay, so suppose I am in UP and I am consuming alcohol. Okay, but somehow I am driving my car and somehow some area has come where UP, where Bihar's jurisdiction has come up. But I don't know. I still consider that I am in UP. I am not aware that this is now I have entered into Bihar, because state boundaries are not set like national boundaries. States do not have borders. Okay. So now in this case, this excuse may be somehow taken, accepted by the court that I was in UP. I believe that I am still in UP, but somehow Bihar came up in between. Okay. So this may be a defense. I am not saying this is always a defense. This is a fact. Okay. Ignorance of fact may be a defense, but ignorance of law is never a defense. Okay. In our country, I take a Labrador, I buy a Labrador, that is an legal thing. So now I travel to suppose Argentina and I take my pet dog with me in the flight. So now on the moment I enter the Argentina, I am arrested. Why I am arrested? They consider Labrador as an exquisite species. They consider Labrador as a extinct animal and you cannot have a Labrador as a pet. Now I tell them that I was not aware of the law of the Argentina. No, I shall be punished. Okay, because it is my responsibility to know the law. Clear? But suppose somehow I show them that I was not aware that this dog is Labrador. I thought that this is Doberman. Okay, then somehow I may be excused, but otherwise not. Defense of law is no defense. You cannot plead that I was not aware of the law. Then because I broke the law because I was not aware of the law. No, this can't be done. You jumped the red light, but you were not aware that jumping the red light is an offense. No, this is not the case. Okay. Impotentia excusat legem. Impossibility excuses the law. Inability excuses the non-observance of law. Okay. Law, if broken, if you have broken the law, if you have violated some law, will be excused. That means it will be not counted as a crime. If you can show that following that law was impossible, obeyance of that law was impossible for me. Let's take a situation. I go to jungle. I go to jungle on jungle safari say, and I go down to take some pictures. And now I am lost in the jungle. My entry into the jungle is not valid. Okay, no issues. I have entered the jungle illegally, but now I am lost in the jungle. It's been 3 4 days. Okay, and then I suddenly see a lion rushing towards me. Okay, or not, let's not take the example of a lion. I see a deer or a deer or some other animal which is protected animal, and I am hungry. I probably will. I have not had anything from last 3 4 days, and I am not 3 4 days or 7 days, and I am not aware about the jungle or the plants. I am afraid that if I pluck and eat any fruit, I may die. Fruit may be poisonous. I am not aware. Okay, I am now I shoot down a deer and eat it. Now I will be excused. Okay. Now the law will say, I have not committed an offense. Law may find me guilty for illegally going into the jungle. But law cannot find me guilty for killing the deer. Why? Because it was impossible for me to follow the law. I would have died if I would not have killed that deer. Or suppose a bear was there or lion charged at me and I killed that lion. So I cannot be expected to follow the law in an impossible situation. I am in an impossible situation. The lion will kill me. So now I have to kill the lion. Okay. So when you break the law or violate the law in impossibility, when it was impossible to follow the law, then you have committed no crime. In absentia, in absence, or more fully in one's absence. Okay. Doing something in absence of other thing. Okay, in absentia, when something is absent or someone is not present, like say suppose there's a case against Dawood Ibrahim and Dawood Ibrahim is not caught up, he is not available in India. So we'll now court will try the offenses against Dawood Ibrahim in absentia. In absentia means in absence of Dawood Ibrahim. Usually it's a principle of criminal law that trial will commence only when the criminal is present in the court. But some cases criminal may not be present in the court. In that case the trial will commence and he can be sentenced. Okay. So that is called in absentia, in absence of something. Ipse dixit. He himself said it. It's a court principle. Ipse dixit. It means he himself said it. Suppose I file a case against someone. I file a case that Suresh beat me up. Okay. Now there is no one. I say that Suresh beat me up when I was in the park and park was full of people, but no other person has come to the court to state that yes, when Suresh beat him up, we were there and we saw Suresh beating him up. So what court will say? Court will say that your case is not proved because of ipse dixit, because you yourself only said it. You are only saying that Suresh beat you, but no one else is coming to say that Suresh beat you. There were so many people, but no one is saying. Only you are saying ipse dixit. Only you are saying that Suresh beat me up. Okay. So ipse dixit means he himself said it. If someone is saying something, but no other people are saying it, someone alone is saying something. He is blowing his own trumpet, like Trump is saying nowadays. Trump is saying, I have won the election. Ipse dixit. He only is saying that he has won the election. But America and other people, the whole world says Joe Biden has won the election. So that's a case of ipse dixit. Only Trump said it. He himself said it. Leges posterioris prioris contrarias abrogant. Later laws repeal earlier laws inconsistent therewith. Okay. Later laws repeal earlier laws inconsistent therewith. Repeal means cancel. Okay. Okay. Motor Vehicle Act. We had a Motor Vehicle Act in 1985, which said 100 rupees fine if you do not wear a helmet. And this Motor Vehicle Act was active till 2020. In 2020, we brought a new act, Motor Vehicle Act 2020, which says 2000 rupees fine if no helmet. Okay, so what is the later law? Later law means what came later in the time. Motor Vehicle Act 2020 came later in the time. So that means Motor Vehicle Act 2020 will repeal or will cancel the inconsistent provisions, the provisions which are, the both acts are valid right now. Okay, but if there is some disturbance between the provisions of both the acts, then the later law will prevail. So now earlier law, that is MV Act 1985, says 100 rupees fine on no helmet, but the later law, that is MV Act 2020, it says 2000 rupees fine on no helmet. Now both the law are valid, but the because it is the later law and it will prevail. That means today if you are no helmet, found with no helmet, then you will have to pay 2000 rupees fine. You cannot say I'll pay 100 rupees because of leges posterioris prioris contrarias abrogant. Later laws repeal earlier laws inconsistent therewith. Lex non cogit ad impossibilia. The law does not compel a person to do that which he cannot possibly perform. The law does not compel the performance of what is impossible. Okay, I am a footballer. I contracted with Barcelona to play football for them in August 2020 league match, which is going to happen in Europe. But there was a national lockdown. Suppose there was no national lockdown in Europe. Europe was open, but lockdown was in India. And I could not fly out of India. No international flight is operating. And the Barcelona then files a case against me in Europe that this guy, he took money but he did not come to play. Then this maxim will come to my rescue. Lex non cogit ad impossibilia, because this was impossible for me to do so. So I have committed no offense. This was impossible for me to do so. So no offense. Okay. Lex posteriori derogate priori. A later law repeals an earlier law. A later statute derogates from a prior. We just discussed this maxim. Okay, this is the offshoot of the same maxim which we have just discussed earlier. It is a branch of this law only. We have discussed later laws repeal earlier laws, inconsistent with the it again says a later law repeals an earlier law. Lex posteriori derogate priori. Okay, posteriori means coming post. What is coming later? Priori means which came earlier. So these both laws, these both maxims mean the same thing. Okay. So I needn't explain this again. Let's go to other one. Lex specialists. Lex means law. Lex specialists derogate legi generally. Legi means legislation. Special law repeals general laws. Okay, when a special law comes up for something, it repeals a general law. It prevails over a general law. We have discussed this. Where did we discuss it? We discussed it. Generalia specialibus non derogant. General things do not derogate special things. Similar is the case with the lex specialibus derogate legi generalia. Special law repeals a general law. Okay, so I need not explain it. That means if we have a special law for something, the general law will have to give way to the special law, and special law will win over a general law. Locus standi, the right of a party to appear and be heard before a court. Locus standi. Now I go. Suppose there is some problem in Tamil Nadu, some pollution issue in Tamil Nadu. Now I from Delhi go and file a case in Tamil Nadu that there is a lot of pollution in Tamil Nadu. You file a case against the. I ask the court that you pass directions against the government of Tamil Nadu. The court will ask me, what is your locus standi? What is your right to be heard? You do not belong to Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu people can definitely complain about Tamil Nadu pollution or the Tamil Nadu government or any other government agency, pollution control board or the government of India. They definitely can approach us. But you are living in Delhi, you concern yourself with Delhi. If you start living in Tamil Nadu, then we can listen to you. But you are living in Delhi and you are not living in Tamil Nadu, you have no locus standi, you go back. Okay, or suppose there is a university, IIT, IIT University. It says that I am going to increase the fees for the student. I am going to increase the fees for the student. IIT Delhi, which is located in Delhi, it says I am increasing tuition fees. Okay, tuition fees of our students. I file a case against it. I file a case to the court that IIT should be stopped from increasing the student fees. Court will ask me, who are you? I'll say I live in Delhi. Court will say, then what? I will say because I am living in Delhi, IIT Delhi is also in Delhi, I have a right. Court will say no, go back. Court will throw away my case. But if I tell them that I am a student, I am affected by this, then court will hear me. Then I will have a locus standi because this law is affecting me. This increase in the fees is having an effect on me. But if I am not a student at all, how am I concerned? I am studying in AIMS, but because fees is increased in IIT, what is my concern there? Let the people from IIT go. I do not have any locus standi. Okay, that is a locus standi, right to be heard. Whether I have a right to be heard in the court or not. This is the principle of locus standi. Mandamus, a writ or order that is issued from a court or superior jurisdiction that commands an inferior tribunal court or an authority to perform or refrain from performing a particular act, the performance of which is required by law as an obligation. Okay, this is we have done. We have discussed the mandamus, and in the constitutional law slides, you people can go back and listen to it. Usually, it is directed against, not against tribunal or court. It is wrongly mentioned here. Sorry, inferior authority, public authority. Why inferior authority? Because only inferior could be directed. Superiors cannot be directed by people who are subordinate. Okay, only superior can direct inferior. So you go to the court and say that there are a lot of potholes in the road. The road is not maintained. Give direction to municipal corporation committee. Court will pass a direction that you maintain the road. This is mandamus. Okay, we have discussed it in the constitutional law slide, so I will not discuss it again here. You people are requested to refer to the constitutional law slides where we have discussed this writ of mandamus in detail. Modus operandi, method of working. Okay, modus operandi is method of working. What is your way of working? Like we have seen a lot of movies, like we see Dhoom or we see Bahubali movie, in which what was the modus of operandi of Bahubali? What he did? Okay, he catapulted himself through a tree and reached to the fort of the Bhalaset. Okay, that is modus operandi. Similar is the case with modus operandi of committing a crime. How did you commit a crime? Okay, you broke open the house, you killed someone, you stole someone, you did this, you did that. What was the modus operandi? You used to steal the cars. How did you steal the car? What is the modus operandi? Mode of working, okay, way of working. That is called modus operandi. Mutatis mutandis, the necessary changes. Two contracts similar but necessary changes like name, addresses, etc. Mutatis mutandis changes means when we say word mutatis mutandis means exactly similar. Okay, usually it is used in contract law. That contract between Ram and Sham is mutatis mutandis, means exactly same with necessary changes. What are the necessary changes in the contract? Okay, in the name of Ram, in my name, in Sham's contract, Sham's name will be written. In my contract, my father's name will be there. In Sham's contract, Sham's father's name will be there. My address will be there. In Sham's case, Sham's address will be there. Otherwise, every term and condition of the contract is same, mutatis mutandis. Only thing different is the name, address, identification, which are necessary changes. Usually, service law is usually mutatis mutandis is applicable in service law and contract law. Okay, when a government employee joins, suppose a government employee, a person joins as a sub inspector. Okay, so when in his batch, when he became a sub inspector, almost 200 people also became sub inspector with him. So the contract of employment of all those sub inspectors is going to be mutatis mutandis. That means they all will have similar terms and conditions of the work, only with the necessary changes in each appointment contract. Their name, identification, parentage, address will be different. Otherwise, everything will be same. That is called mutatis mutandis. Nemo debet esse judex in properia sua causa, or it is also written as Nemo debet esse judex in properia causa, or so I should mention or here. Or also known as Nemo judex in causa. No man can be judged in his own case. No one ought to be a judge in his own case. This says you cannot be a judge in your own case. Okay. You cannot judge your own case. Someone else will judge you. Suppose I am a judge and if I have committed a crime, I cannot myself judge me. Okay. You cannot be a judge in your own case. It also means to say, okay, suppose you are a judge and some crime has been committed by your wife. Then you cannot judge her. You will have to send the case to some other judge. Why? Because Nemo judex in causa. No one can be judged in his own case, and wife's case is definitely your own case. Son's case is your own case. Wife's case is your own case. Okay. Or suppose I am a chairman of UPSC. Okay. My daughter has cleared UPSC exam and I am the current chairman of the UPSC and I am conducting interview for all those people. When my daughter's turn would come, I cannot be a part of interview panel. I'll have to leave the interview panel and other people will judge my daughter. I cannot sit and interview her and pass or fail her. Okay. Nemo debet bis vexari pro una et iadam causa. A man shall not be vexed twice for one and the same cause. Okay, a man shall not be vexed. Vexed means disturbed. Okay, a man shall not be vexed twice for one and the same cause. Okay, I have taken 5 lakh rupees from you. You go to the court and say that court, he has to give me 5 lakh rupees. Court dismisses your case. After a trial, court says no, he does not have to give anything to you. Now you cannot again file a case. Next day you cannot again file another case that court he has to give me 5 lakh rupees. And court says no, he does not have to. Then you file another case that court he has to give me 5 lakh rupees. No, you cannot do that. I cannot be vexed. I cannot be troubled for one thing again. You can trouble me once only that I have taken your 5 lakh rupees. But if the court says I have not taken it, then it is final. You cannot again go back to the court and start fresh. Okay, that means no one shall be vexed, no one shall be troubled twice for the same cause. Okay, or if police says I committed Sham's murder, police takes me to the court says no, he has not committed the murder. Then police cannot again other day arrest me and again file another case that he has committed Sham's murder. Earlier judge did not understand our case. New judge has come up. Let's again file a case against him. New judge would understand us better. They cannot do so. Once a court has heard the case of the police and dismissed it and set me free, court again police cannot take me and say that he has committed Shyam's murder. I can be tried for one offense, one act only once. Okay, I cannot be again and again taken to the court. If the court has said no, no is final. No means no. It doesn't mean that you will again take me to the court for the same thing. Okay, no one can be vexed, harassed, disturbed, tormented, troubled, tried. Okay, tried twice for same offense. No, it is not legal. It cannot be done. Demobis punictor poranotem delicto. No one can be punished twice for the same crime or offense. Okay, no one can be punished twice for same crime or offense. Now police says that I have broken Shyam's hand. I have committed fracture to the Shyam. Judge sends me to 6 months in the jail. Okay, I come out of the jail. Now again police says he has fractured Shyam's hand. Now judge says again you go for 6 months. No, it cannot be done. If I have done 6 months and I have come out, I have completed my sentence. Now again it cannot be, I cannot be again punished for the same offense twice. I cannot be punished for the same offense twice. Okay, I have fractured Shyam's hand in Bihar and I ran away to Delhi. Okay, now Delhi police has caught me. Delhi police has filed a case against me in Delhi, and Bihar police has filed a case against me in Delhi. Delhi court says 6 months, Bihar court says 8 months. It cannot be done. I can be tried either in Bihar or in Delhi. Okay, but I can be sentenced only once, either by Bihar court or Delhi court. I cannot be sentenced twice for committing one offense. One offense, one punishment, simple rule. Okay. How do we get this rule? By this maxim. Now you understand how these maxims are important. They save you. Okay, and they bring certainty in the law. That law has to be certain, uniform, same for everyone, and it has to be clear. No man can be disturbed twice. Also, no man can be punished twice. Okay. Nemo punitor pro alieno delicto. No one is to be punished for the crime or wrong of another. No one can be punished for somebody else's crime. Very simple rule. I commit murder, my father is not responsible. Okay. My brother commits an accident, I am not responsible. No one is to be guilty of somebody else's crime. One who has committed a crime, only he can be held guilty, otherwise cannot. However dear or however near the other person may be to me. Okay. However dear my father may be for me. Okay, however close me and my father may be. But if he has no role to play in the crime, then he has no role to play at all. If I have committed the crime, then I alone shall be guilty, no one else.